Victoria at the Commonwealth Police Board meeting for November 15th. Before us, you do have a draft agenda that was proposed, and so I would ask if someone would like to move adoption of the public agenda as published. Sean, is there a seconder? Carla, any comments, corrections, amendments? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I have under new business. I have a announcement to make, announcement and statement.
Very good. All right. Under conventional rules of regulation, we do need formal motion to add a new item to the agenda, and that is usually with unanimous consent of the voting members. Is that your custom here as well? You assume it is. So
Yes.
A motion to add an item under announcement, so that would be under new business. I've heard that as a motion, and it was seconded. All those in favor? That's unanimous. So we will add that under new business. Thanks very much, Paul. With that addition, and I'm going to suggest that comes as item B under new business. Is there any other comment on the proposed agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thanks so much for that. Next would be the adoption of your public minutes from your last meeting, which was September the 20th. Look for a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes as circulated. Very much by Sean, second by Isabella. Any comments, corrections, or amendments needed to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Those are carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Which takes us on to item C, which is the update from the Chief Constable. Chief, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Chair. And so I'll start off by just kind of highlighting a few of the activities from page 4 of 27, which you'll see in your package for my monthly engagement highlights. Since the last police board meeting, there's been 2 on-duty line of duty deaths that I attended the service for. So the first one was in Toronto for Toronto Police Officer Constable Andrew Hong. A number of us went over to Burnaby for the regimental funeral for Burnaby Constable Shaylin Yang. And also in between that, on September 25th was the annual BC Law Enforcement Memorial, which was held right here in Victoria. Since the last board meeting, I've actually made a concentrated effort internally to really spend a lot of time meeting with different sections, divisions, and patrol watches. In total, I've had 10 of those sessions with various divisions, including specifically the staff sergeant rank, also with civilian staff as well. Tour de Rock finale happened on October 7th. So myself and a number of other colleagues were down at the BC Legislature welcoming the team after their 2-week ride down the island. I had the opportunity on 2 occasions to go out on foot patrol into the 900 block of Pandora and through some of our parks with our community service officers. And since the election, the municipal election on October 15th, I've extended an opportunity to all councillors to come out with Vic PD so that they can get a chance to walk with the officer or have a ride along with the officer and get a chance to see what actually is happening on the front lines in terms of public safety and some of the challenges that our officers are facing. I was also wanted to just highlight last 2 things. One was I was asked to be a panelist at Molson College for the Forum on Mental Health, Addictions, and Justice. And so myself and 4 other panelists participated in that. That was very well attended with lots of great questions from college students. And last week I attended the recruit graduation ceremony at the police academy. And so we had 7 recruits that graduated, and one of our officers, Chris Allen, won the overall Best Recruit Chief Constable's Award. In fact, that's a 2nd award that Vic PD has won in back-to-back recruit ceremonies. So there was, for this graduation that I speak of, there were 62 recruits. So quite an honor for Vic PD to win the top recruit award. And so that's my activity. But I also wanted to just highlight for the board some of the incidents that Vic PD has responded to, and I share this with you to let you know the level of complexity and the severity of crime that our officers are attending to on a weekly, if not daily basis. And I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it really is important for the board to get a snapshot of some of the seriousness of the calls. And you can just imagine the number of officers that are responding to these calls and the investigative steps that need to take place to identify a suspect, take a suspect into custody, prepare the proper paperwork for them to appear before the courts. So first one I'll just highlight is we arrested an individual for an unprovoked hammer attack. And so this happened at 9:30 in the morning. A male, this was absolutely random and unprovoked, approached an individual in the 900 block of Pandora and used a hammer and struck the victim in the back of the head. The injuries were quite significant. For a head injury, we were able to locate the suspect a short distance away, and he was arrested without incident. We were investigating a sexually assault and robbery by a stranger on a female. And so what happened here is a woman was sexually assaulted and robbed by a stranger. This occurred on a Tuesday night around midnight. And a woman had been attacked at St. Anne's Academy in the 800 block of Humboldt Street. We had a detailed description. Multiple units responded to this call as it's a high priority in making sure that we're not only supporting the survivor, but also dedicating as many resources as we can to identify the suspect. And so after a detailed description, we supported the survivor and made sure that she was treated for her injuries and taken up to the hospital. But about 3 hours later, one of our patrol officers, so this is at 3 a.m, arrested a suspect in relation to the attack. And so we're able to arrest that individual. There was another incident where officers investigated a robbery, a hit and run, and a stabbing. And this occurred on a Friday night, just around midnight. This was in James Bay. A male was approached by 2 other males. He was attacked. He had his vehicle stolen from him. During the altercation, one of the individuals was stabbed. These 2 individuals who stole this man's vehicle then fled at a high rate of speed, only to be involved later on in a hit and run and a significant collision with a stolen vehicle and a parked truck. We were able to locate the stolen vehicle and further that investigation. And the last couple ones I've got is this one received a lot of media attention where we arrested a suspect in a series of armed robberies targeting potential buyers of used video equipment. So this individual placed an ad on Used Victoria that he's selling gaming equipment. And as individuals would reach out to him, because of course he's selling it at quite a reduced rate. And so he's generating a lot of interest from people. He would identify a location where he would meet up with a potential buyer who obviously showed up with cash in hand to try to buy the gaming console and then was held up at gunpoint. And so that was a significant investigation. In fact, the individual was arrested for 4 armed robberies that we know of. One of them was in West Shores area. Victims are deeply shaken, as you can imagine. But it took a significant amount of work on our part to be able to identify who this suspect was and to come up with an arrest plan and to arrest him. And the last one I'll just share with you is officers investigating assault with a weapon on a woman in Centennial Square. So a woman is walking through Centennial Square at 8:30 at night. This is a few weeks ago. She's pepper sprayed in Centennial Square. And she was approached by a man and woman who demanded money and then assaulted her with the pepper spray. We were able to get a really good description, and officers were able to identify this individual and arrest him later in the evening. So really good success. And this just really goes, and I want to highlight this to the board that, our officers are out there through the middle of the night, and they're really doing great work. They know who the people are. They know where to look, where crime has occurred, and they're able to usually at a high level of success, either identify the suspect or make an arrest within a few hours. And in the cases where they don't, we have enough kind of investigative capacity and kind of experience that we're able to work with intelligence and find out what may be happening and to be able to identify who the suspects are. So all of this leads to higher level of community safety. But I just wanted to highlight again, these are just some of the, I could be here for hours talking about some of the calls, but I just wanted to give you just a breadth of some of the calls that we've attended since the last board meeting. Thank you.
Chief. Are there any questions or comments for the chief? Seeing none, do you usually by convention by motion to receive or you just?
No,
No,
I don't,
please continue.
just continue.
Moving on then to our next item is item D, the equity, diversity, inclusion and engagement update. Provides that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Chair, for that. And so I'm on page 5 of 27, in the back half of my report, I've got a separate category for equity, diversity and inclusion engagements. So the one I'll just highlight is that on September 30th, on the National Truth and Reconciliation Day, a number of Vic PD staff were invited. Actually quite an honor and quite humbling to be invited to be a part of their grand entry and also to take the Vic PD flag amongst our Indigenous leaders. And so we were able to attend the South Island powwow. And there was morning and evening sessions for the grand entry. And so Vic PD was present there supporting our Indigenous community. The other thing I wanted to just touch on is a number of us attended the first ever Canadian Association Chiefs of Police EDI conference. And so I wanted to just share with you, if I may, just a couple of the highlights coming out of the conference. First off, it was really good to see such a national interest and police agencies from across this country represented. We had our 2 co-chairs from our EDI committee that attended. Inspector McCrae from Human Resources was there, as was Deputy Chief Laidman and myself. And so I'll give you a couple of the things. The biggest thing, the biggest takeaway for me was that make the investment, don't expect overnight results. It takes time. But it's worth it. Have a plan, be action oriented, but make those efforts. And again, I've got Deputy Laidman who kind of oversees it, although he's now co-chairing the EDI committee. As the board's aware, we are going to be engaging an EDI professional to come into Big PD and to help us with their EDI work, amongst other things, to help kind of guide what our internal EDI committee is doing. There was some discussion around common understanding and that language matters. Looking really at the impact of policy development and processes and asking questions about how can we focus more on inclusion. And a couple other things was just, we talked about words matter and having common understanding. Others talk about individuals that are it's going to be uncomfortable conversations. People will get defensive. And so how do you move past that? How do you have conversations without finger pointing and without people building up walls? There was talk about privilege. Is privilege a word? Is that a trigger word for many people? Could we use the word advantage? That we can recognize that people had advantage or have had advantage for many years in many areas. The other part was listening to people, trying to understand where they're at, and building relationships and active listening. The last couple of things I'll kind of leave you with is, as I said, just really focus on moving from talk to action and be bigger picture thinkers in what we're doing, and needing to review the baseline and redesign the baseline. The baseline can't be set for the middle class. It has to be a set standard. And who is that standard set for? Just continually asking yourself that question. And finally, there was talk about a lot of our organizations perhaps are structurally inclusive. And the goal was to be authentically inclusive. And so what's the difference between being structurally inclusive and being authentically inclusive? So I'll kind of leave my comments on that and happy to take any questions on my EDI. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the chief's report? Either. Thanks very much for that, Chief. Moving on then to item E, committee updates. And we have 3: Finance, Human Resources, and Governance. Who'd like to go first? Finance first.
Thank you, Chair, and finance likes to go first because we know we're the most exciting part. So we had no motions, but we do have 4 items that we would like to bring up to the board. And first 2 being the monthly financial report and the overtime report And to that, I'd like to turn over to our controller, Steve Burkholm, to just provide the highlights.
Sure. So
So explain how he's not gonna have a deficit.
Yeah, so I'll go through them both at the same time. The financial report is a monthly report that goes through the finance committee. This one brings us to the end of October. It's not quite as detailed as I planned, just due to some timing constraints to get it into the finance committee. I will be bringing a more complete financial report forecast to the December finance committee and board. As we're getting close to year end and we are very close to budget, so our numbers are a little bit tight this year. No significant change from the previous forecast. Still at this point forecasting a minor deficit of approximately $153,000. Plus we will still need to charge the excess retirement costs over budget to the liability. The deficit will likely be covered either through a reduction of the transfer to the capital reserve, or we also have a financial stability reserve. So I've already had some discussions with city staff on this. We'll work with them when we get closer to year end. We know what those numbers actually look like on how we'll move forward with that. One of the things to note is overtime has, and you'll see in the overtime report, overtime has been very high this year. We had a lot of staffing challenges, especially on the front line in the first half of the year. And I know our HR department has been working very hard to bring in experienced police officers to fill those gaps. We're starting to see the benefits now. A lot of the call outs for overtime to maintain our minimums are going down. They're significantly lower. So I'm expecting to see that play out in the last couple of months of the year through our financials. Just a couple of other cost drivers that were unexpected this year. The province has moved forward the timelines for us to pay more into the cost of the Justice Institute for training recruits. So for this year, that's going to be a $66,000 additional cost. But for next year, you'll see it in the budget. It's a significant item. It's going to be about $500,000 2023 budget. Also with the shooting incident in June, we reviewed our protective equipment. So we had some unexpected costs to upgrade our equipment there to protect our offices. That was an additional $115,000. We did also have to bring in some additional backfill for the emergency response team to cover Canada Day. So we had to pay for that out of pocket. That was in excess of the budget that we had through the city, so we had to absorb some of those costs as well. There were some other ones as well, the Queen's funeral, maintaining our janitorial as we're still dealing with the COVID response, and software maintenance costs were quite high. So in terms of overtime, we're still tracking higher than budget, but we are starting to see that lower patrol call on numbers. So we should see a trend downwards towards the end of the year, and that could have a potential positive impact on our financial situation. Both administration and operations are over budget right now. Admin is driven mostly by human resources. It needs to train and recruit. So obviously our recruitment drive is using more resources. Community engagement and the critical incident stress management team due to the events this summer. Operations, not surprisingly, driven by frontline policing, but also investigative as we continue to have unfilled positions in the frontline. And as I mentioned before, the shooting incident, Queen's funeral, those were unexpected expenses. So that's a summary.
Thank you. Got any questions on the financials or the overtime report? As usual, Steven's done an excellent job. Second, the third item, I guess, on my report is to report on the finance committee's strategic planning agenda item, which is to increase financial stability over the long term. And there's 3 action items under that strategic item. The first one, to implement the special municipal constable program, has been complete, as I understand. The second action item is to leverage work with integrated policing units across regions and encourage other regionalization initiatives. I guess where we're at in that right now is the board, we're going to give councils time to settle in before we approach them to help to possibly facilitate further discussion and maybe collaboration to encourage the provinces to work together towards stabilization as well as the two municipalities working together better, playing nice in the sandbox, if you will. But we're gonna wait until people have, gotten their feet wet. And the third item is oversee the development of a multi-year staffing plan. I've got one bullet in action items there. That is put on hold until the framework agreement allocation of officers has been arbitrated, and that's still underway. The second item is, I just added this, is the restructuring of the police department, as we talked about earlier. Allow that to get implemented first as well. So those are my excuses for not progressing on those items. Thank you. The last item we got is the joint board and council meeting, which has been delayed. First, I guess we initially delayed it because of new councils, and then we couldn't come up with a suitable date. But I do understand, and I'll get Colette to confirm this, but I now believe it has been set for January 17th, 2023, and nobody's allowed to change that anymore.
That is correct, as I understand it as well.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any questions, that's my report.
Any questions? Finance? Finance is the most interesting, isn't it? Without finance, what can we do? All right, I think you'll need a motion to receive your report usually, so would you like to, or just present your report? Yeah. Okay. Wow, good for you. All right, moving on then, the human resources.
It's a tough act to follow.
Right.
Our committee right now, we're working on reviewing and clarifying various protocols such as board media spokesperson, release of information, conflict of interest, as well as there are going to be 3 of the 6 inspectors will be swapping portfolios as of January 1st. And this is as a succession plan and allowing people to gain more experience in different areas, which we've just recently seen with the deputy chiefs also switching portfolios. So this is an exciting way to diversify the knowledge and experience in the team. Chief Manick has recently spoke about the EDI conference that he attended, and I actually really found that really fascinating, structurally inclusive, authentically inclusive. I think that's something that definitely we can do more, as well as we have one motion, and that motion is to the board approves extending the incentive for an additional 12 experienced officers for up to $240,000. And in November of 2021, we passed a very similar motion for Vic PD to offer an incentive of $20,000 for officers signing up. And if I'm using the wrong word, someone please jump in. And that was extremely successful in bringing new, strong recruits to the team. So the HR committee is bringing that motion forward to continue the success and strengthening our team.
So Cheryl, I'll take it you're moving that motion.
Yes, please.
Is there a seconder? Any comments, questions?
I'll make direct this question to our controller. Is this 240,000 that we built into the 2043 budget?
It's not going to be in addition to the existing budget. There are a couple of items that we could fund this out of. One of them being overtime, because it will have a direct positive impact on overtime. Also, the budget item that we put together for the JIBC for recruit training could also be used for the incentive program. It costs, the JIBC is going to be charging us about $23,000 per new recruit next year on top of the cost that we already have to house them and accommodations and everything that goes with that. So it's actually cheaper from a financial perspective to hire an experienced officer and pay the $20,000 that is to send a recruit over and then wait 18 months for them to actually deploy them. So we can use those funds as a forward beginning to subsidize this.
Thank you, Steve. I knew you'd have a good answer.
Any other questions? Yes, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, to the committee chair, through you, Mayor and Chair. Maybe to the senior management. So the previous 12 folks that were hired, senior officers, maybe could you speak to what success was in terms of recruiting those experienced officers, in terms of perhaps do you have an idea what parts of the country more folks came from versus say, or were they maybe from the island, for example, that other catchments that are preferred. And maybe second, maybe speak to the 20,000, for example, perhaps clarify as to generally when is that given to the officer? Is there a certain time period where they'd be on the job, for example, like 60 days, 90 days, et cetera? Just for the public to understand, when officer releases are made, sometimes it's good for them to understand at what point such funds are released to them. And maybe one last thing is how beneficial is it to those folks when they sign up? What do they typically use that for? Is it relocation costs? Is it typically traveling use, whatever? Like how much of an advantage do they see that this money being helpful, given the cost of living, given how expensive the city is? If you don't mind answering.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to defer to Inspector Jamie McCray, who has all of those answers because he's updated the senior leadership team on just those very questions.
Great, thanks, Chief, and thanks, Sean. There was 3 questions there, and please remind me if I missed something here. Firstly, the question, where are we recruiting people from? We have been successful all across the country. We have recruited some municipal police officers from other municipal police agencies, including London Police Service, Toronto Police Service, Calgary Police Service. We've also been successful with members of the RCMP from various places across Canada, including today when we swore in a brand new member from Fort McMurray. All of them have some reason or some desire to come to Vancouver Island, and more specifically to Victoria. We are very fortunate that we live in Victoria because it's a place that people want to come to. Now, the downside you've already mentioned is the cost of living and a lot of those barriers, and we hear about that very frequently on our recruiting front, both for experienced police officers as well as for recruit police officers. What they're spending their money on, vast majority of them, particularly those who have been recruited from other places, which really is all except for one that I can think of off the top of my head. There was one that was a local transfer from another agency here in the South Island, have spoke about using the money for housing. That was without question something we heard loud and clear from those people that we have been recruiting. Now, there is a few that did come from places where housing is extremely expensive, such as Toronto, but the vast majority are coming from places where the cost of living is quite a bit lower. So it is something that they need to help assist them get into the market. And then finally, the when do they receive the funds? So once they have been sworn in, at the 6-month mark of them working for us is when they receive the money. However, when they do start with us, they sign an agreement that they accept the funds. If they stay with us for under 3 years, they actually are obligated to return the entire $20,000. If they stay with us for 4 or into year 4 and year 5, it's a prorated amount of that. But as long as they stay for 5 years or beyond, they don't have any obligation to return any of the funds should they decide to leave at that point. We had looked at other industries. It's in the policing industry relatively rare, as I spoke about when we first proposed this a year ago. It's been relatively rare to do something like this. In other industries, however, this is not uncommon. And so we looked at different models that they used in order to ensure they weren't just signing somebody up, giving them the money, and then losing that person after a 12-month window. So we're excited. We're looking forward to, quote unquote, relaunching this program again. We have seen such great success from it, this and various other things. And we're very hopeful we can be announcing to you in 12 months' time or less that we've hired our next 12.
Questions, great answers. Anyone else? Any other questions? I have one question. Actually, it might be for Mr. Herkim, I'm not sure. These are, this $240,000 is just for the incentives. So does that mean that built into the budget is the rest of the cost of 12 new additional officers?
Yeah, so it's within our authorized strength. So we have we always have a number of officers who want work safe claims, whether those positions are always vacant. And then, so within the authorized strength, this would be where we'd be funding the actual wages from. The we're not talking about an addition to strength.
Want to clarify? Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, this has been moved and seconded properly. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It's unanimous, thank you very much.
Chair,
Yes.
we're not under the community charter and abstentions are allowed.
Ah, very good. Would you like to
I
abstain?
abstain from any recommendations on the 2023 budget, and I do abstain.
Very good. I'm sure Colette will make a note of that. Thank you very much for that, Paul. So not unanimous, but all in favor and certainly the majority. Thanks very much. That takes care of our comments and reports on human resources. It moves us over to governance. We have Sean, let's see.
Pretty much, Mayor, and Chair. Sorry. Yeah, so governance, so there's only we have a couple of motions before us, but 3 items to really talk about. The first motion may seem like part for the course, because here we are on November 15th, and we're making a motion about something that happened on November 10th. This was a conference that Michaela Hayes and I attended with the board support on November 10th. It was put on by the province of British Columbia, particularly the department. There's Crown Resource Board Office is the name, or CABRO for short. These are the folks that you hear of recruiting for the various all throughout the province. So they graciously put on a conference last week, and whereas almost called a governance 101 on one hand, but also a really good high-level discussion of reconciliation, new ways of learning and dialogue with the community. We were also pleased to have Premier Morgan attend the event and address the audience. There was a lot of boards, there were various different stripes and for those who don't know, board members are on the whole volunteers. So we were all volunteers there. So now, having said that, when we send folks, we typically have a motion and we typically, go through a certain process. But however, this event came before this meeting, so we sent people, which is great. But of course, we have to follow procedure. That's why there's a motion before it, which says the board approved board members Dylan Hayes to attend the Crown Agency's Governing and Public Interest Conference on November 10th, 2022 in Vancouver. So I'll move that motion forward.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Yes, Paul. Any comments, questions? None, all those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, John, you have another motion, I believe.
Yes, I do. Thank you. And I'll follow up that I will bring Michaela and I will bring a report to the board probably next meeting or so. We're going to earnings from the conference. It's really our protocols, and whenever board members attend any conference or webinar or seminar, we typically do a report card, if you will, that we share our knowledge with the board. So we have a 2023 board meeting schedule. It's there on page 22. Essentially, we have to have a formal motion to approve the schedule as presented for 2023. I don't think there's a between session, but I think the chief has his hand up. So I'm just going to, if you don't mind, go to the chief for a second.
Sure. Yeah, just one change that I would like you to consider. Since the calendar got added to the board package, the joint board council meeting got set for the 17th of January, which happens to be the same day of the January police board meeting. And if you recall, what we've done in the past is the month that we have the joint board council meeting, the police board meeting is usually canceled because it's taken in lieu of the joint board council meeting. So just for you to consider as you make the motion, do you want to do a friendly amendment to cancel the January meeting in lieu of the joint board council meeting being on the same day?
Thank you very much. You flagging that. Actually, I didn't realize that. So that's something I would actually like to make that amendment to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Please, that we look at canceling the January board meeting of the joint council meeting, which Doug Crowder referred earlier as January 17th. So we could add that to the motion. We could. And
Yes, absolutely.
the mayor correct, if I could now.
Yes, very good. So the motion for the proposal of the agenda and schedule for next year has been put with that one amendment, that the meeting on January 17th is actually the joint board and council's meeting and not regular meeting. So that's moved. Is there a second? Any further conversation, questions? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Anything else for your governance report?
Yeah, there you see my my update to the strategic priorities for governance committee. I won't go too much into it because it is a fairly lengthy document, but for the public, I'll let you know that, which I'll get to the other end of the agenda, is that when we propose our strat plan, sort of short form of it. We did a 2-year strat plan session, given COVID, typically the board does a yearly strat plan. And we are now coming upon the session where we will now revisit it, we'll move back to that yearly model. So some of these items that you see, perhaps you think that, have they really addressed it? A lot of them are still ongoing, the rest, and we'll be picking those up again in our new strat plan. And a lot of them try to carry over, carry forward. And we'll have that discussion in more detail when we get together. So let the public know that these are not being dropped per se, or these not incomplete. It's still, sometimes, again, this expression for course, sometimes things are just happening in a different time manner, but it is something that I'm aware of, and I know other community chairs are also aware of this as well. But that's all I was going to say to that portion. Thank you.
Right, any other questions or comments on the governance committee report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. That is for co-chairs update, just very briefly. Mayor Jardin is away, which is why I'm sitting here in chair as the other co-chair. And I would just want to thank with the indulgence of folks who are around the table for being extremely welcoming and kind, since this is my first meeting. And I just had a question actually, and that is usually in most of the meetings I've attended, we started with land acknowledgement. Is that a convention here?
Yes, it is.
Right, and so maybe in the absence of that, and my apologies for not doing it at the beginning, which is what it should have been. But as part of my comments, I guess I would just offer appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity to be working here. Our friends and family from the Saugeen Tennisquam Nations, and I'll make sure that in the future that it's actually added formally to the agenda so that people like me don't forget. And it's been my pleasure to join you today, and I look forward to future opportunities to be part of your conversation, if not to facilitate. And I understand that we have quite an exciting time ahead of us, so I'm pleased to be with all of you. Thank you for your welcome. Moving on then to item G is the BC Association of Police Chiefs and Directors update of patrol. I believe that's you, is that correct?
Yeah, BC Association of Police Boards, we have our next board meeting on Friday. It will be my first board meeting that I will not be able to attend. So we have Peter chairing and Michaela is my alternate, so she'll receive an invite to attend the meeting. We have solidified our dates for our conference, which will be in Nelson on May 25th and 26th. And we are very close to rolling out the BCAPB Awards program, hoping for January. I've updated all of our documents based on our board's input, and those will be going before the board on Friday. And those 3 awards will be one for community recognition, so there'll be a BCAPB LUT award, so it's not a department having to say, look how great we are, where members of the community can nominate members of the police department that they have had great interaction with or have think are doing a great job. And then at each municipal police board that participates in this, it will be the BCAPB's reps' responsibility to roll out the awards. BCAPB is going to provide the awards, news releases, all of that type of information. And then the other 2 awards will be able to be given by the police board to the department, one for innovation and slipped my mind the other one. So that will be a surprise in January. And that's my update.
Thanks very much for that. Any questions or comments? None, very good. And then we move on to item H, which is the board member engagement update. Let's look right now. Yes, go ahead, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, typically what we do is we update the community about any events or any ceremonies that the board members have attended. Just sort of FYI or information purposes. For myself, I will talk about 2 things. I appreciate the board letting me represent the board at 2 swearing ceremonies. This past little while for both new recruits, new meaning straight from GIBC recruits, and also those who are experienced officers. And I was excited to see on the new recruit side the diversity and inclusion of the type of new recruits we're bringing into the department, and also a very big conversation of all departments have across the country. What is the reflection of the officer makeup, in terms of diversity of race, ethnicity, and also experience. And I was pleased to see that this great group of fine folks who, chosen the career policing. I saw some of that in there, so I gave you good hope. And also the experienced recruits, which are the more senior officers that that are brought to the department. I was up to see some of the lived experience that they be bringing to the department. Some of these officers, have experience of trauma, some situations that maybe are or may not have had experience with. However, they can bring that levity and knowledge to this department almost up to speed, which is really nice to see. So, folks are wondering about, if bringing new recruits versus experience, if there's one versus the other, they're both equally valid and they're both equally appreciated, I would say. And from the board perspective, I see that adding to the overall diversity, inclusion, or overall knowledge base. At the end of the day, these are folks that are here to serve the community and provide the policing that the community wants to see, essentially. So I just want to touch upon those two things that I engaged with my experience with that.
Thank you, Sean. It's very informative. Any other board members wish to offer anything? Okay, moving on then, item I, it's the 2021-22 board strategic priority update. Who's gonna take that?
It's generally a standing item. Okay, but if there are updates.
Nothing new to add today. All right,
But that I'm aware of.
okay.
Report on updates recorded, done this.
Great. And then on to the framework agreement, our last item before new business.
Again, that's only if there's anything material to discuss on it.
Excellent, very good. So that takes us on then to new business, and first is the board planning session. Sean, I believe that's yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Just let the public know that I was speaking to earlier, that we're near the time of the year, but the board is going to be getting together to do some board planning or new strat planning. And so we're going to move back to the yearly model versus the 2-year model that we currently have in place. So this is a discussion with the board that two things I'll be asking the board. One, if I get permission from the board to assign the governance committee to plan the possible dates for this event and run it by the board. And two, and by dates, I mean sometime either January or February. That's sort of the months we're thinking about. Knowing that we have a heavy agenda in January, may I acknowledge that. So one, I want to just put that out there. Two, I want to put it out there if the board is okay, comfortable again, if the governance committee chair again can help me develop the process for the venue, facilitator, etc. Basically, I'm asking your permission to task our committee to do that work for you so that we can have that ready for you in time once we land a date and a venue and all that fun stuff. So that's just sort of general discussion I'd like to have through you through the.
I think you're volunteering your committee to do a lot of work.
Sort of,
I'm really
yeah.
surprised if anyone objects to that, but we'll start with that.
I'm all in favor of Sean doing it.
Somehow I knew you'd say that, Jack.
Yeah. Can't imagine anyone objecting to that. Any other questions or comments or advice I'd like to give to Sean?
Will you also,
Move that to the committees, our next committee meeting.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Does it require a motion or you just?
It can just be deferred to the governance committee meeting. And Chair, if I may, just you might want to consider for the dates waiting until the 2 brand new board members are announced, which are supposed to be sometime in January.
Sean, I'll leave that with you for your consideration.
That's right.
There may be an issue with that, and obviously that will be left with you as timing of that, as it sometimes does take some time to have new board members appointed. So we'll leave for you and your committee then the consideration of whether that is something that, which takes precedent, waiting for the 2 new people or strat planning your rate. But we'll leave that with your committee to continue that. All right, that would be item A, and then we have one other new business item, item B, it's the announcement, and that was Mr. Schechter.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Well, as the board knows, I have decided to step down from the Victoria and Esquimalt Police Board effective on November 30th, at the end of this month. It has been a real pleasure serving with the members of the board. I have truly learned a lot from each of my board colleagues. The primary reasons for my decision are that I feel I do not have independent access that is needed for needed information to ensure that the public gets an efficient police force. And also not having the ability to ensure that important policies are operationalized. An efficient police force is one that manages public safety using reasonable resources, taking into consideration overall community well-being. To be clear, I'm not saying that Vic PD is run inefficiently or that it is overfunded or underfunded. There is need for greater transparency and analysis. The last budget approved 10 new positions. These are, for various reasons beyond our control, are just about to be implemented, have not been able to be implemented in the last year. This year, the department has been lobbying for a further increase in strength. The Vic PD budget increased by 45% between 2002 and 2009, and now represents about 25% of the total budget of the city of Victoria. Again, I'm not saying this is overfunding or underfunding, but it's not clear whether this increase or how this increase has had an effect on crime reduction or public safety. Esquimalt is seeking to reduce its police numbers and costs. Some critical factors are beyond the police board or the department's control. The province is providing fewer external reviews while downloading more and more responsibilities and costs on the department. And this certainly is a factor that is increasing budget. All these factors impede the board's oversight of efficiency. As the board knows, I have abstained on the 2023 budget recommendations because I am not prepared to serve on the board when I cannot exercise due diligence in providing oversight on pivotal budget issues. The second reason is I'm concerned about the board has not been able to effectively address policies that create mistrust within vulnerable communities, such as street checks and the duty of police officers to intervene with each other when they see unlawful conduct. I am concerned with how critical policies such as de-escalation and use of cultural competency resources have been operationalized as experienced in recent incidents involving mental health. Some of these, and maybe most of these, are structural problems that are not within the officer's control. Police officers are put in an impossible position. They are tasked by law to apprehend people in mental health crises. This often seems to demand escalation of force and authority to implement their apprehension. However, escalation rather than de-escalation increases the chance of adverse results that negatively affect both the subject and the police officers. These are momentous issues, yet the board has limited power to review or provide direction on such incidents. I am thankful that both the department and the municipal government have embarked on an innovative step to mitigate some of these contradictions. But they cannot do the job alone. We need all levels of government, including the province and Canada, to do their part to find more enduring solutions. I will continue to support the police, as I have done, on their mission to provide public safety to our entire community. And I would like to see a two-way effort to build even stronger bonds of trust and respect. I want to give my appreciation to the chief, the deputy chiefs, and other senior management members I have worked with. I have really, and this is honestly from the bottom of my heart, been super impressed by your dedication and thoughtfulness. You have been open to listen to different views, even ones that challenge existing police culture and ones that I know that you back off from. And thank you for listening to these views. I hope that you will incorporate recent training and become disruptors to change outdated attitudes and practices. And Chief, I think I know you know what the positive meaning of disruptors are. I state without reservation my respect for the compassion and commitment of Vic PD's sworn and civilian members. Critiques I have raised, and I know I'm known for more critiques sometimes than support, but I do give support. The critiques I've raised are directed at policies rather than the members' unquestionable dedication to the public. Through the time I've been here, I have not seen any member who hasn't given more than 100% to public service. Thanks again to the board and Vic PD management for their highly professional collaboration. You continue to have my respect and admiration. I know you will do your best to solve the problems arising from the hard job of policing our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. I believe that concludes the agenda of the public meeting. It's why we look for a motion to adjourn. Okay. Isabella, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. That concludes the public meeting.